When you hear the word empathy, do you think A, boring, ugh, slow, thankless, hard, or B, really just the same as sympathy, a little stronger, or C, heals trauma and grief, or D, opens self to freedom and adventure? Yeah, C and D both are the right choice. You could cheat by looking at the title of this message today. I guess we all know that empathy is a way for us to heal, but empathy is also a license to feel. Given all the time and the money we spend escaping boredom or anxiety with travel, culture, music, restaurants, or alcohol, or drugs, or compulsive work, or digital media, or gaming, there's good news. We can access adventure for free with empathy. Empathy can heal trauma and grief, but it also can deepen life and free us for fresh relation, delightful peace, and joy. Why do we need empathy to heal? Let's start with a couple of examples. Looking at the war and violence that are troubling us all so much. A man named Maoz Inan's father and mother were massacred in Hamas last month in Israel. He mourns his parents. He despairs for kidnapped friends. Yet he fears the unbearable losses are now being used to justify violence against those in Gaza. Empathy. Joe Shemenji in Lewiston, Maine, was a bar manager when a patron came in with a gun and began shooting. Joe ran into the kitchen and grabbed a butcher knife, and instead of running out the side door and saving his life, he ran into the bar and tried to kill the gunman. He was shot and killed. Joe's father said, "I cannot hate the gunman. This is what happened to him, too." Empathy. Children are suffering from bullying, abuse, trauma, and aloneness exacerbated by the pandemic. More than 2/3 of all children under 16 have reported some kind of abuse, psychological, physical, sexual, or some kinds of events that have hurt them. Even before the pandemic, SEL, meaning social emotional learning, became the most purchased curricula in our school districts across the country, more than reading and math, SEL. But they found that by training the teachers and the students in social emotional learning, the math and reading scores rise. Imagine children during the pandemic without school to relieve trauma or hunger, at home, often with no parents. And imagine these children growing up with social media and seeing on-screen evidence that they don't measure up, or experiencing derision. These children need to be seen. They need to feel seen, not to feel alone. The awareness of the impact of trauma or adverse life experiences on individuals is growing, and so is the understanding of collective trauma. Painful awareness of our forebears' suffering or our forebears' victimizing is inherited. Examples of collective trauma include slavery, wars, natural disasters, and pandemics. Collective trauma affects those who experience traumatic events, and it's inherited across generations. UUs in this congregation especially address collective trauma in many ways, including through support of Native Hawaiian rights, LGBTQ, standing on the side of love, ADORE, Jubilee, and much more. Thomas Hubble and Gabor Mata, two leaders of the collective trauma treatment field, say trauma is the presence of hurt when you are all alone in it. So we need to be together. If we are not aware of our feelings or thoughts or sensations from adverse experiences, then agitation, uncomfortableness, and misunderstanding may emerge in our communications. This will interfere with our peace, our enjoyment, our relationships, coherence, and sense. But when we feel and address trauma together, we can begin healing. We can empathize. Awareness of self, the space between us and our group of friends, can bring attunement, a state of transparent relating with each other. We can engage in sense-making if we share an emotional space. We can talk from, not about. When we feel heard, we can make sense together. We just shared earlier with our invisible keiki that Taylor Swift and Peter Yarrow and how they model relationship and empathy. And empathy and transparent communication trace back from Taylor Swift and Thomas Hubble and Peter Yarrow and Bill Withers to Martin Buber and to Buddhism. We're going to dive into Buddhism and Buber as roots of and support for empathy, because looking deeper is what we UUs do. But first, what does this have to do with UUs here in Hawaii? What does it have to do with our daily lives, our spiritual journeys, the vibrance of our healthy, beloved community? All denominations seek to live through spirit, which they may call heart. Buddha and Buber both point to the essential union of mind and heart for personal growth. We UUs tend to exercise the mind part in addition to the heart part more than most denominations. UUs are highly focused on and effective in social, collective trauma and empathy. I'm a lifelong Unitarian, and after 4 years earning a Star King MDiv, chaplaincy, 2 long-year internships in churches, ordination by this congregation, I am solidly a UU. Our constant denominational effort to blend mind and heart, to protect those in harm's way, to revere diversity, to celebrate life, is an inspiration and a relief to me in a world of divisive and dangerous feelings and actions. And UU Honolulu has made me yet more grateful to be a UU. It's a joy and an honor to be a member of this congregation, this beloved community, for over 13 years. I remember when I first arrived, in addition to the UU-ness, I loved the waft of breeze that came through this church, and I loved the lighthearted and deep affection, the generous effort and sharing, the commitment to arts and culture. All of this seemed to elevate the UU I had known yet more here in UU Honolulu. We are a most privileged congregation within this great movement. I'm especially moved by this congregation and all that we do for social justice. One night, I was at a community prison reform meeting. There were about 32 people in the room, and I counted 24 were from this congregation. The amount of energy and time our members and friends give to justice and social compassion is an extraordinary demonstration of collective empathy. Our collective empathy and our growth as a community might be further strengthened with more focus on interpersonal, relational empathy, which can open spiritual depth and practice, which can help with healing ourselves and others. Let us experience the space between us, strengthening the channel of loving communications. Relieve us from self-consciousness, from worries and concerns and attachments, and give us new, exciting insight into other souls. That takes us to Buddha. Buddhist understanding and practice is helpful in strengthening interpersonal empathy. We're likely all familiar with the Four Noble Proofs, truths. We've got life is suffering, craving costs suffering. Good news, we can escape suffering, follow the Eightfold Path. So all we have to do is to have right view, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, and we will transcend suffering, overcoming self-interest, imbuing self and world with a dignity of purpose and action, and treating others with ethics and respect. Empathy. Buddhist practice or mindfulness, such as vipassana, may enable us to free ourselves from self-involvement so that we are able to relate to others as equally important as ourselves. Not easy. Martin Buber, existential Jewish theologian, wrote the groundbreaking book, I Thou. How many of you have read I Thou? Buber first researched Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, and Christianity to support his thesis that I and thou are the hinge and the door that open to something much more expansive than what is confined by the boundaries of our own skin. Buber asserted that the capability of humans to relate to other humans and to nature as a thou, a subject of equal weight with our own identity, rather than the objectified it. We have that capability. Seeing others as equally important rather than beings or things to be dominated by our own will or desires, this enables us to participate in an I-thou relationship which can give us a space of divine. This is where empathy can get really exciting, I think. When we let go of the rightness of our position, when we let go of our position completely, we simply relate to another in the moment, and we can feel something that goes beyond us. Buber influenced Christian thinkers Tillich and Niebuhr. He helped Carl Rogers to found humanistic psychology, and he had a massive effect on most thinkers in the 20th and 21st century. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King wrote in his Birmingham Letters, I cannot reach fulfillment without thou. The I-it relationship inherent in segregation does reduce human beings to things. This is why we want to resist relating to other human beings as an it. Living with Buber's I-thou relations eliminates I-it disrespect, discrimination, separation, and segregation. In relating to others in an I-thou relationship, we eliminate disrespect and we achieve empathy. Participating in an I-thou relationship does not just raise the other, the thou to the subject, but it also changes the I. So if I'm able to be together with you and I see you equally important as a thou, I have changed. I'm now raised as an I to your thou. Christian theologian Paul Tillich said of Buber's I-thou theory, whenever we meet a thou, our whole being is involved. We are completely within the situation. This relation, of course, is mutual. Only in this relation is the whole of one's being involved. I myself, not some part of me. Such a relationship is possible with a tree, with another person, or with a spiritual essence, and in all of them and through all of them with God. The name of the I-thou relation is love. So many of us seek relief from seeing ourselves in terms of expectations we did not meet, worries about the future, regrets at what we've done or not done. These are I-it ways of looking at ourselves, and they're I-it ways of looking at the world. Common ways of escaping are alcohol, drugs, all the binging things we mentioned before. In an I-it relation, we're concerned with what are they doing for me? How do I like this? Was it fair enough for me? But relief and adventure are options right in front of us as an alternative. If we see ourselves as I in a relation to thou, we are in the present, not in the past, not in the future. We experience mutual dialogue in the moment instead of worrying about what was done or not done. We do not crave escape from this meeting. This meeting is love, and it brings health. Finding I-thou relations is the Jewish scholar Buber's concept, but it's subscribed to by Christian leaders, Martin Luther King, Tillich, and many others, and to me, I believe it grows out of that eightfold Buddhist path. The positioning of the self in the moment, addressing another as a subject, not an object, is also the UU blend of heartful and mindful respect of each and all diverse beings and elements of the universe. Buber and Buddhist leaders point to the merging of mind and heart, and we UUs embody this merger of mind and heart more than any other denomination or group I know. This is a tremendously freeing way to transcend suffering. Peter Yarrow was able to merge heart and mind to drive Operation Rescue to countries around the world. And now Taylor Swift is able to use empathy to drive an economy. I have felt this kind of dialogic empathy here in this church. Buber notes that in an I-thou relationship, we are in the now perpetually. But in an I-it relationship, we are locked in the past. We entered the relationship for a purpose or a gain. Whatever we sought is already over in an I-it relationship. Then we react to and judge what happened then, rather than being alive in the current moment. From 1972 to 76, I was a student at Stark King, and I learned a lot through chaplaincy internship in a Catholic hospital and 2-year-long internships in churches. A lot of training in different ways, but my very first year, I was in a suicide course. And in that course, we did a practicum. We were sent out to hospitals to do some counseling. And so my first night, I arrived at San Francisco General Hospital, and the charge nurse said to me, a young man came in this afternoon, and we don't have any doctor or counselor on duty, and he tried to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and we'd like you to talk to him. And I thought, how could they be asking this of this brand new intern? But there was no choice. I was to leave him alone in his room longer or talk to him. And luckily, I had with me my bag of markers and paper, and luckily I was scared, and I knew I was ignorant. So I sat at the activity table, and they brought this guy to me, and I just started to draw and gave him markers, and he drew, and we were there in the moment. And because I was so scared, I was really in the moment. I was not in the past, I was not in the future. And he was very important to me. He was a thou. And so we had this moment, and he told me the story that he had gone in the rain. He felt separated from family and friends, and he'd climbed over the rail at the Golden Gate Bridge, and in the rain, some car had swooped to a stop, pulled him in, taken him to the end. They had the police. The police came, took him to his house, left him at his house. His parents let him in. He went upstairs to the bathroom, got in the shower, cut his wrists. And he spent hours in the shower. He hadn't cut deeply enough to bleed out. But the parents didn't come up to the room. And this kid was there for hours. Finally, the father came and found him, and they took him to the hospital. He'd gotten to the hospital, and there was no counselor and no doctor. So he'd had almost 24 hours since he'd gone out to that bridge. And he hadn't talked to anybody. But in this moment, he related so much to me. And so I have never forgotten him. And this was probably one of the most important lessons I got in seminary about centering oneself and being open to another and what that can do, the difference it can make. My ministry now is working to strengthen education opportunities to enable each learner to find and develop their own unique gifts. And this involves working for equitable, respectful, engaging, relevant learning for all. And currently I work with local organizations, the Department of Education, content developers across the country, systems developers, trying to find solutions that will help reach kids. We need to reach kids. Yet, there are threats daily to the practice of empathy in this as political moves undercut the needs of many of these kids. And some of the teachers and the kids are not treated with respect. And the families are not always treated with care and respect. As happens in life, sometimes people speak without empathy, without an I-thou relation. Feelings can be hurt and conflicts may erupt, and some conflicts may be soothed or made sense of, or they may persist and they may undercut community. Why does this happen? Well, there are varying interests in the education world. The budget has to be submitted to the legislature and they have to decide what to spend it on. Many of our legislators don't know about public school. They went to private school. There are many reasons why we don't always get the empathetic I-thou relationship and support of public education we would like. Hierarchies operate and sometimes objectify the staff and the students and the families as its. In our church here, where we have a commitment to UU principles including social justice, we may spend more time empathizing in a collective sense than an individual sense. Perhaps our penchant for studying and learning and using our reason may sometimes be at the exclusion of our awareness of our own feelings or others. This can get us stuck in our own view. This may cause us to relate without empathy. We may see the outcome as more important than the moment of relationship. If we become in an I-it relationship, if we have a disagreement, if we are made to feel disrespected, or if we interpret it that way, overcoming that feeling of disrespect may be too much for us. We may lack the Buddhist view of constant change that could help and may instead marinate in anger. This sets off a vicious cycle. Infuriated people vent, but unlike a geological volcanic eruption which releases tension and creates new land, expressing frustration with fury or projecting blame or impatience or victimhood submerges the sacred relationship between us and we become objects to each other. How can dissension like this be unscrambled and made sense of? Buber says, to address another as thou requires a certain self-surrender that springs from inhabiting one's own presence at the same time you step out of it. Only then does the other cease to be a means to one's own ends and become real. Can we in our daily lives step away from our position and engage in self-surrender to realign an I-thou relation? It's not easy. Perhaps what Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois said to the Northwestern graduating class says it in a more understandable way. He said, in order to be kind, we have to shut down that animal instinct that force our brain to travel a different path, and we have to force our brain to travel a different pathway. Empathy and compassion are evolved states of being. They require the mental capacity to step forward past our most primal urges. Or as Gil Fronsdale, leader at Spirit Rock, notes, to be free only when things are pleasant is not real liberation. Similarly, to love only in optimal conditions is not real love. Not a few Buddhist meditators have experienced great love while in meditation, only to have it disappear quickly outside of meditation. Learning how to include love's presence when we speak to others, when we are in conflict with others, can be a daunting task. It begins with the intention to do so. My study and experiences at Quaker Swarthmore, at Stark King, internships, and my reading and study and Vipassana retreats and all of this has been necessary for me to do my best to maintain empathy and radical human respect. This effort requires support, and I am grateful for the support this church provides for it. An example of UU Honolulu's support of empathic practice has been the OWL program. Where's Nan? Nan Kleiber's leadership of the Our Whole Lives program is exemplar of I-Thou relations. The training with Nan, the meeting with families, and the work with youths all were within the I-Thou relation. The absence of focus on self permitted the joyful experience of the space and the present moment. Truly a transformative program Nan led for many years, helped me. UU Honolulu is committed and has acted with empathic I-Thou respectful support of Native Hawaiian rights, LGBTQ, standing on the side of love, Black Lives Matter, Jubilee, Adore, the Eighth Principle, criminal justice reform, and more. May our empathy continue and increase in collective social and in individual interpersonal relations. Mahalo for giving me the time and the space to share these thoughts with you, beloved friends.